morning. Hello, I'm Amanda. I'm the Events and Marketing Director for Bookworks, your longtime independent bookstore. 36 years we've been in the Rio Grande River Valley of Albuquerque, and we're pleased to be offering virtual events and sales from our website during the pandemic. So while we're sad we can't see all of you book lovers, you can still support us by shopping online, which you can do 24/7 from our website. And it's Bookworks without the O's, BKWRKS.com. If I had a dime for every time I'd said that, I would be rich by now. So I'm going to drop the link into the chat. I will also drop a link to the new books from our two authors for today. We've got a double feature here with Casa Urraca, Zach Hively's press here out in New Mexico. We're very excited to be supporting a local publisher and one of my favorite local writers, Barrett, and Amaris Ketcham, a new friend to us who we're also pleased to have with us here today. So thank you all so much for joining us. If you're just tuning in, I'm Amanda. I'm with Bookworks, your longtime independent bookstore in Albuquerque. Please shop local this holiday season. Yesterday, we celebrated Small Business Saturday, and we're moving into the holiday season. So please think about supporting your local businesses. Somewhere in the range of 70 cents per dollar stays in your community when you shop at a local store. Jeff Bezos does not need your money. So please, even if you're not in Albuquerque, support another local bookstore. Most of us have websites, so you can easily shop online. Okay. Done with all that spiel. Very, very pleased to be here today with Barrett Price, one of our longtime friends at Bookworks. You all probably know that he's had a long, illustrious career in journalism and has authored numerous books, many of which have come out with UNM Press. Albuquerque at the End of the World is one of my favorites. He also has a memoir and poems in Chaco Trilogy and Broke and Reset. Amaris Ketcham is also here in New Mexico, and her work has appeared in Creative Nonfiction, LA Review, Prairie Schooner, and a lot of other places. Zach Hively is going to talk to these two about their two new collections with Casa Urraca. Zach, hi.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks so much for doing this. This is really special for me, actually. Just started Casa Urraca Press this year, and back in the day, 12 years or so ago, I was a bookseller at Bookworks. So this being our first author event feels like a really special thing. I've been so excited and so honored to have these two poets this year because, like I said, I just started Casa Urraca Press. The idea was there before the pandemic, and then somehow decided it was a great year to pull it off. And often the process for turning a book around from idea to print is a couple years. And with these two on board, we were able to do it in a few months apiece. So thanks to them for working with me. It's been an honor. And these are two people I'm really, really proud of. And Amaris actually is gonna talk to us first. And she gets a lot of credit for really pushing me out the door to make this happen. It was right before the pandemic hit, probably the last thing I ever did in public before all this. Amaris and I went and had a beer, and with her history in publishing, I let spill the beans that I had this crazy idea to start a small press. And her encouragement kind of pushed me off the ledge before I had my wings ready. And it helped because she told me she had this really killer book idea that she was looking for a home for. And I thought, I want to see this. And that idea became Glitches in the FBI. Her 30 poem chat book that is easiest to define, I suppose, is found poetry from the X-Files. So Amaris, thanks for being here. And I wanted to see first if you would talk to everyone about what found poetry is exactly.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Amaris Ketcham. So for those of you that don't know, found poetry is a kind of literary collage. It's where words or phrases are taken from an original source material and then placed into a new context to be read as poetry. So this reframing of the original materials had a long history. It was often employed by the Dadaists and surrealists as ways to either revise pieces, to spark creativity, or to kind of make us look at the printed world in a different way. So some early poems would be like cut up newspaper articles that then were rearranged into a poem. A lot of people in New Mexico, a lot of my students tend to call it blackout poetry. So there must be an educational mission in the K through 12 system where students are taught to redact with a black Sharpie in order to kind of create their found poems.
And I think a lot of people have this idea that writing, that poetry is pulling the words out of your own soul or your own brain or your own inspiration. So this is sort of the opposite of that process, because you're taking a source material and plucking words from it. So how does that, for you, how is that process different how is the creative process different when you're finding poetry versus more traditionally creating poetry?
Yeah, so I've read that writing found poetry is a form of self-annihilation of the author, because through this type of collage, the author sort of steps back and then the content comes through much more clearly. And the content almost seems to dictate itself. So like chance and surprise really dominate, rather than like more steady gaze of self-reflection or diving into research. In my previous chapbook, A Poetic Inventory of the Sandia Mountains, for example, that I researched flora and fauna extensively in order to write each of those poems. Whereas this one, I never knew what was going to come out of any particular poem or of any particular set of words. Yeah.
So one of the things that really intrigued me when I first said, hey, I'm starting this press, and you said, I've got this cool poetry idea, was that you said you were sourcing poems from the X-Files. And why that intrigued me so much was the X-Files feels to me like this very particular moment of 90s pop culture. And it's ubiquitous. We all know what the X-Files is, even if we've never seen it. And so I was curious then, and I bet other people are curious now, how this book came about from, or why this book came about from the X-Files in particular, out of all the source material you could have used.
Yeah, so I was rewatching the X-Files during the pandemic. I've had a lot of time to watch television instead of like go exercise or go to literary events or art events around town. So in rewatching the X-Files, I found myself really listening to the dialogue and being impressed by different words that would come up. There's a really interesting mix of concrete images like David Copperfield or McGruff the crime dog, and really abstract language that pertains to science, investigation, government conspiracies, that kind of thing. So I really admired the language that was already there and wanted to play with remixing different ideas and images from the show. A couple of people have asked me like, why the X-Files and why not Star Trek, or why not some other popular television show from another decade? And I think part of it is that like while Star Trek has like good themes, a lot of the language in that show and other science fiction shows in particular is made up to create a new reality and to create a new world, right? There's a lot of world building that happens in sci-fi and fantasy in particular. And so that language, like warp drives and positron matrices, like those things don't exist. And you have to know what those are in order to understand any kind of poem that might allude to them and what the histories of them are in context to the show. So it becomes that'd be much more of like a fan poetry. Whereas the language in the X-Files is equally comfortable with like eating pizza in a motel room and like really wanting to see the Loch Ness Monster.
That's a good juxtaposition. Actually, that there's one of the poems in here that talks about pizza. So it's funny that you even plucked that one out. So one of the things that intrigued me too is I was familiar with found poetry, like the blackout style poetry, where you take a newspaper article and black out words, and the words that remain form the poem. And I'd never known someone to do found poetry from a primarily audible word source. Like I know that there are scripts of the X-Files, but we all experience the X-Files as an auditory spoken dialogue. So I was really curious if you would talk about what your process was for taking the source material and turning it into these beautiful poems?
So sometimes, I would always start by watching the X-Files, obviously, and then maybe I would hear a word or a phrase that I found interesting, and I would go to look up that transcript online. From the transcript, I made like a list of verbs, a list of nouns, a list of adjectives, maybe a list of little phrases that I thought were kind of neat, or like words that I thought that sounded interesting together. And then I would sit and stare at these for a couple hours thinking, this is utterly impossible. Why am I doing this? There's no way I can make a poem. But often I would contradict myself and see some kind of entrance in the words that I had selected. So maybe there were a couple words about, or a few lines about handwriting or IVF. And I thought, well, that's what the poem's really going to be about. It's going to be about this. And so then this sort of provided what the poet Richard Hugo would call the occasion for the poem. So Richard Hugo wrote a book called Triggering Town, reflecting on his process of driving to different towns in Montana and writing poems about them. So for him, the town would trigger the poem. For me, it would be these words in the show. And the idea then is that you kind of write away from it so that it doesn't stay centered on the subject, but it becomes a new thing, like a living and breathing work on its own.
Well, and that feels particularly apt with these poems because not only did you have to give each one its own life, they depart from the X-Files in that knowing the original source episode might enhance your enjoyment, but it's in no way necessary to experiencing the poem. So I mean, was it a conscious directive for yourself to divorce the poem from the source material, or how does that just happen organically?
I think it's probably a little bit of a combination of both. I wanted people to be able to enjoy the poems without knowing anything about the X-Files. And a few people have actually told me that after reading some of the poems, they have never seen the X-Files before, and now they want to go watch the television show. And so it's kind of had a backward process there. But part of the joy in this found poetry process was not knowing what would happen with each poem from the get-go. So like not having an idea of, oh, I've got this great line, now I've got to figure out how to write a poem for it. Or I have a thesis statement that's, here's my thesis statement for my poem, or a character or something like that. And so some of the dialogue I was able to wrestle into a sonnet or a series of haiku or rhyming couplets. But for the most part, the poems seem to be able to dictate their own directions, their own characters, monologues, or just weird juxtapositions of words and ideas.
Nice. It's really fascinating to me too, because you had written only a small handful of these poems before we agreed to do the book. And then to see the full manuscript and to see that it wasn't just a collection of cool 90s words, that each poem really did manage to have a perspective or a character or a voice it just tickled me. It was one of the things that made me really excited to champion this book, which, by the way, everyone, just a reminder, is available at your local friendly Bookworks, who are doing curbside and shipping right now, I believe. So, Amaris, I wondered if you would read a couple poems for us, or a few poems for us. And maybe if you want, feel free to give a little context into the poem if you want, or just let it stand on its own. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, yeah. Well, I figured I would start by reading a poem that's got a lot of aliens in it, because I recognize that that's probably a driver for people that do like the X-Files. And then we'll sort of move along into fewer UFOs. This poem, and now it's like I can't even remember what the episodes were from the poems, because it's been a couple months and so much has happened. But so this poem is Ordinary Anti-Waltons. It's repurposed dialogue from season 1, episode 2. Do little green men ever wake from a deep sleep, read the newspaper and say, screw it, climb the ladder just to fall on their ass? Do they open their minds only to let someone mess with their heads? Do little green men ever get carried away, feel spooky or special, like they nailed it, or down and out and busted? I wonder what it means to be down to earth in another galaxy, leaving a bizarre fingerprint on another history, searching for a close encounter, any kind of message, to make you feel like you've just crawled out of a nest and you're still safe and awake for the first time.
Thanks for that, Amaris. I appreciate for everyone too that you do on each poem. I'm just going to try and hold this up to my screen so people can see. Will say that you've repurposed the dialogue from a particular season and episode, so those people who are curious about the source material can go find it.
Yeah, and then maybe as you're watching the episode, you'll recognize a word or something too, or a phrase.
All right, so move us away from the extraterrestrial, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So this. So the next poem, I asked my husband to pick out a poem that he liked since I read them all to him. We had a little game that we would play where I would read him a poem and see if he could guess the episode. And this would be like right after we'd watch it. He never guessed one of them. So that to me said that I was doing a pretty good job of not relying on the content of the show in order to make a poem that could stand on its own. But he's an archaeologist, and so he liked this poem, I think, because there's archaeology in it, and there was archaeology in the original television episode that it references. But it also, I think, has to deal with a lot of some of the things that were going on this summer. Quite a few of the poems, because they're written over the summer, sort of reference our ideas of history, place, our understanding of what are the mythologies of history. And so this is kind of one of those poems in that vein. It's called Only a Cat Can Worry Ancestral Rats. And it's repurposed dialogue from season 3, episode 6. Mona knows the superstitions of old systems, the nature and depth of bureaucracy. She's feeling squirrely of late about these artifacts and their mythologies. History handcuffs us, she says, projects security while claiming our spirits. Form letters should be buried in urns along with free advice. So far underground, 1,000 years of tunnels won't excavate them. Wild their whereabouts and overflow them with curses, Mona. If you save the bones intact, it will just doctor itself, summon determination and crawl through the sewer with ceremony. So let's hold in us a jaguar spirit. Give it some room for a personal jungle, ready to take 1,000 small bites.
Awesome. Thank you, Amaris. Let's do one more if you're game for it.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the interesting things about found poetry is that sometimes it provides an entrance for you to sort of reflect on things that that are going on in your life, as well as sort of surprise you with things that words and images that you didn't know you were thinking about. So during the pandemic, I think probably like a lot of people, I've lost a fair number of family members and friends, not just to the virus that's going on, but to other ailments as well. And so this is a poem for one of those friends. And it's called Witness, and it's repurposed dialogue from season 1, episode 15. When he died, I thought I saw a fox slipping through the field, lone and clever. He ran in the country like a ghost, daring me to blink. Blink and the haiku's over, and you forget. His eyes, the way he moves, what came first, the chicken or his coop, the promise or his pressure. I traced the pen grooves from his last note, his handwriting clumsy with age. The fox too is a right-hander, stepping out of the lot like a secret. Feet of fire, disguised in a wooded land. But I have a hunch he's still out there, thriving and toothed and hidden, like a fluid cursive, writing on.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amaris. I have to tell you all that it's pretty special to see how you can take something that feels like a good construct at the start, dialogue from the X-Files, and turn it into something that powerful and personal. So Amaris, I really admire your poetry in this. And everyone, I do encourage you to check out Glitches in the FBI chapbook at Bookworks. So Amaris, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Zach.
Yeah, and I'd like to now introduce V.B. Price, who Amanda already introduced, and it's hard to top her introduction, but I'm really excited to talk with him about his book, Innocence Regained, Christmas Poems. These two books juxtapose each other so strongly because not only is one about UFOs on the cover and one's got Santa Claus on the cover, but this one, was the bulk of this was written. It was hot. It was done during the pandemic. And this one is actually 50 years of a life assembled together in a book for the first time. And when I started this press, I knew I had Amaris on board, and I wrote V.B. Price, and I said, "You are the only person in the world I would say this to, but you have a blank slate. Anything you've written that you would ever like me to publish, go for it." And I didn't expect him to go for it because he could be published with anyone he wanted. But he said, "I would love to do these Christmas poems." So Barrett, I would thank you for this honor, first of all. And I would love to hear from you what the origins of the Christmas poem tradition are, what this 50 years of work consisted of, and why it was unique from any of the other poetic projects you've done.
Well, I think I'm a child at heart, as we all are, and I thought that Christmas always was a miracle time for me. It always, no matter what terrible things that happened to me, I could always count on that one moment where something beautiful would happen, something completely out of the blue that emphasized to me once again that life is the most precious gift we have, and that every day is just a potential for deep, profound enjoyment. And my late wife, Renee Price, the painter, and I started to do little Christmas Eve events for people, for waifs who wanted to put up a tree with us. And we would decorate the tree and have a little too much to drink and stuff. And about the second time around, I think, this was actually before we were married even, I decided that I should give them a poem just because that's what I do. And so I did it. And then I got to thinking about it, and it just seemed to happen every year. I'd write them in the weirdest places. Many of them are written in a particular room at the Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas, New Mexico, under desperate situation, terrible time constraints. And oh my God, what am I going to do? And then it just kept on going over and over and over again. Eventually, and very unhappily, Renee contracted cancer and was in a lot of discomfort for a lot of years. But she always used to remind me that the way to get over many things is to concentrate on what doesn't hurt and what isn't a problem and what's not paining you. And so I took that to heart and started writing the poems about that as well. And so she died in October of last year. I was lucky enough to be able to do the last one of those that year, and then I did another one this year. So I think it's going to continue. And,
yeah, I'm excited for a few years from now when we get to do the updated edition.
Me too. That'd be lovely. That'd be great.
And it's really special to me. I think this book ties a lot together, and with Barrett's talking about his wife Renee, and that's her artwork of Santa Claus on the cover, and in so many ways this is just such a special book because of the tradition you have behind it, and that these poems weren't written for journals and they weren't written for books. They were written for your loved ones. And but that's me speaking from the outside. So I was curious to ask you, what's so rewarding for you with keeping that tradition going every year?
Well, I think really the every year presents us with an array of troubles, and an array of fabulous joys. And usually the troubles get more attention than the joys. to our shame and sadness. The joys are just as real. Love is just as real as cruelty. And so I find myself, like I think we all do, struggling against the terrible turmoil of our times, and why Innocence Regained, the idea of Innocence Regained, which I believe I took from William Blake, is that it is possible, I think, to use the joy of children as a model of how to revive ourselves in terrible times, really excruciating circumstances, and see the world, even if it's just for a moment, as a surprising glory, an Elysium that's just for us and just for everybody we love and for the whole world. And that if we see it, it comes alive and it takes its place in the hierarchy of events. But if we don't pay attention, they slip right by us because we're hardwired to pay attention to pain, not to happiness.
Well, and what struck me, I mean, I've been the very fortunate recipient of a decade or so of Christmas poems, and this was the first time I'd read many of them from before 2009 or so. And there's truly a sense of wonder in here. I mean, it's not Christmas as December 25th or as Santa Claus coming down the chimney. It's Christmas as just this state of wonder and curiosity, and I was just really struck by how much life is in here. That I know, there's certain years I can say, oh, I know what was happening in your life that year, and there's years where I have no idea what was happening in your life, but every one feels intensely personal, and yet in that beautiful way, somehow universal. I mean, applicable to, I can apply each of them to me. And I was curious if you would talk a bit about, just for a moment even, about the emotional quality of this book as a whole.
Oh boy. Well, I think I always say that I'm rich in friends and rich in family, which means I'm rich in love. I've been deeply blessed. And when you do what Rini said to do, pay attention to what doesn't hurt, you realize that what doesn't hurt is everything else. Everything else. The rocks in the street. I happen to be a guy who's looking down all the time, looking for rocks in the street, and I'm always looking for round rocks, beautifully round rocks. And I'm always finding them. Is it because I'm looking for them, or is it because they're just always there? But they seem to say to me that, oh yes, there really is an underlying order to the universe, and it's a lot of it has to do with beauty, and a lot of it has to do with love. It's close kin. And so I think, I'm 80 years old. I've lived through World War II and the Korean War and the Vietnam War and all of our wars now and all of the cruelties of the world and all the terrible poverty and all the hideous injustice. And I've been lucky enough to be a reporter too, so I'm a witness to those things. And we need to pay attention to what's not them. We need to pay attention to that stone in the street, or the beautiful morning, or that kind of day when you suddenly wake up and the sky is blue and the wind is blowing, and nothing is more beautiful in the world than that. But we tend to diminish that in our minds because it's not serious. Of course, love is serious, and of course, beauty is serious. Of course, the gift of life is serious. What's more serious than that? Anyway, so I think crudely, I'm not very articulate today, but I think crudely that's what that's about too.
Thank you, Barrett. Well, let's just jump in. Why don't you read us 3 or 4 of these poems?
I will. I would love to. I'd be honored. I'm going to read one for my nephew, Chris Fuqua. It's called Reversing the Fall. And it's for Chris, who took us there. And it has a motto quote from Walt Whitman, A Song of the Rolling Earth, number 3. The quote is, "I swear the earth shall surely be complete to him or her who shall be complete. The earth remains jagged and broken, only to him or her who remains jagged and broken. At Canyon de Chelly, at its infinite edge, looking down, 10,000 feet down, overcome, opened before its untouchable grace, forbidden, its visible fields, far meadows and groves, its Turanian stream, safe, far away, so far away, exultantly far, that its grace becomes our desire. And the stories we tell to ourselves, the lives we would live there, our longing for dawns on the floor of the deep, in the mind of the place, canyon walls guiding light through the brain. At the infinite edge, the urge is to fly, to embrace what is seen, but the fall, the mortal distinction between flesh and world. We walked down into Canyon de Chelly that day, actually down, descending into desire and into the real canyon we'd seen, reaching the stream, our real feet in the mud, swifts in the air above us, sky above them, actually there with our bodies, our real nerves touching the rock, the water. We were what we'd desired. Our brains filled with the place and what we had made of the place, together, reversing the fall. At the farthest part of ourselves, we disappeared into de Chelly. The distance had opened out into that place in the self, no longer the self, but complete, as one might glance at the morning star, and no distance exists between eyes and light, between light and brain, between stars and the self's earthly night. So Canyon de Chelly, if you've ever been there, is this magnificent thing in Arizona that just plunges down, seems miles and miles and miles. It was a wonderful day. Let me read one called Openings from the next year, actually, from 1984. It starts with a quote from Rainer Maria Rilke. With all its eyes, the creature world beholds the open. As children, we knew animals were strangers who were like us, distant in their fur as history and gods, yet filled with needs, with mysteries and will as given as our own. Our eyes, pure portals to the mind of atoms and of things, as their eyes were, openings of the world. Gliding now with age, half blind, half free, our child sight still divine inside us. We know the world as friend when we can trust animals to be like us, only what they are, not what we would have them be. Irreplaceable, gone almost as we appear. Creature things who love, who know the love itself is not the lover. We make the far unknowing of each other as intimate as stars and dreams that lead the child in us to watch what is, to see it as it is, to see ourselves that way, absolute as sun, as pain, as animals, as night, as the fact and proof of love that gives us sight.
Barrett, these are just beautiful. Let's do one more before we have Amanda open it up for questions from people.
All right, let me, I'll do this one. It's from from the Christmas poems of, well, it doesn't matter when they were, but it's from a suite called 5 Least Fallible Pleasures. And it comes from, the title comes from a quote from Auden. Pleasure is not an infallible critical guide, but it's the least fallible. And this is called Innocent Merriment. It's from my son, Jody Price. A whole biology of beautiful smiles. Winter's calm as ravens shadowing through the pines, dancing on cyclones. We say the bottom land truth to each other. And Santa Claus finds his way to your beautiful heart in the dark of the Christmas light parade. We sleep the sleep of the blessed on the rim of the deepest decay. It's a pleasure to see so much confusion. Merrily, 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 life is such a dream. What does peace mean? He whispered, remembering a hand on his wrist long ago, so warm, so deeply kind. He minds nothing anymore of the crumbling life he leads. As long as blood is the nectar of thought and the mind blinks its constellations, there is more to a memory of love, even the slightest welcoming smile, than to all the inconceivable loss of the world. How practical love is.
God, Barrett, these are just amazing. I can't encourage everyone enough to check this book out at Bookworks. Give them a call. We're such a small press, our distribution's so small. Amanda, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if they show up on the online ordering. I think you might have to call to order, but you can verify that. But please consider getting both of these books from Bookworks. Amaris Feland Ketcham, B.B. Price are what make New Mexico. I mean, they're an example of what New Mexico has to offer on the literary scene, which is quite incredible. So thank you both. And Amanda, take over, and everyone, I think we have time for questions, so feel free.
Yes, thank you so much. I enjoyed hearing the work, as different as it was from each other and from other things I've heard. Wonderful, wonderful work. All righty, we have one question in the comments, and if you have one that you'd like to pose, go ahead and type it in there. Yes, Zach, thanks for reminding me about our services. I was so excited at the beginning, I forgot to mention that we do have curbside service. We have that 4 days a week now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday are in the morning, and then Wednesday is in the evening. So you can come by and pick up books that you've pre-ordered from our website. It's going to help us a lot if you can order online and then await our communication with you to let you know when it's ready for pickup. Just because our 2 owners are running everything with the orders right now, and they have a baby, and it's a lot of work right now with the holiday season. So we're really blessed to have so many orders. We just need a little bit of time to fill them. So you can come pick up books 4 days a week. You can also have things shipped directly to your home or shipped to your loved one. Right now we have free shipping on orders of $40 or more. So if you buy a couple of books, you're probably there, and you can have those shipped for free, media mail, which will get everything to you in time for the holidays. All righty. Michael Krause noted, Amaris, while you were reading, he thought that the idea of found poetry might be analogous to sampling in music. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's pretty similar to, when DJs take different musical sources and kind of combine them to create a new song. Actually, the writer David Shields wrote a book that one of the essays specifically talks about music sampling. It's called Reality Hunger. Michael, you might want to check that one out. That entire book, David Shields, line by line, quote by quote, everything is actually found. And then at the end of the book, he says, here's all the sources for the different lines. Wow, that's a pretty cool one.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a few other writers do this. Scott Wigerman, he has a really nice poem. I can't think of what he pulls from, but he basically takes another writer's poem and uses all those words and just totally rearranges all of it into its own poem. And it's amazing. It's totally different, but it's all the exact same words from another poet's work. All right. Does anyone else have any questions here that they can drop into the chat? Zach, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your work. As many publishers are, you're also a writer yourself. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're working on and about your book?
Sure. I am a little eclectic. My writing's all over the place, but the book Amanda's referencing is a collaboration actually that I did with the photographer Magdalena McCarson. We did a pairing of photography and poetry. And actually not dissimilar to Amaris's work with glitches here, we set ourselves a time boundary. We made our own unique set of rules where we said, okay, we have 1 month to write 15 poems and take 15 photos according to a theme. And then after a month, we swapped those and wrote 15 more poems and took 15 more photos in response to the first ones. So they're in conversation. They're not poems about photos and photos about poems. But that was a ton of fun. And actually the pandemic spurred us to publish that as a book. We were going to do it as a gallery show. And of course, things being what they are, we said, let's just move forward with this. So it's called Wild Expectations. And it was a fun experience for me. And it was also my first foray as a publisher. I said, okay, before I do this work with Amaris and Barrett, let me practice on my own. And Magdalena was really trusting and generous to let me do that. We were really happy with how that book came out. And actually it might have sealed the deal on Barrett trusting me to design his book too. So I'm only kind of half teasing you there, Barrett. But
no, it did. It's a gorgeous book. It's a beautiful, beautiful book.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's the poetry, and I continue to write other poetry, have some forthcoming in the journal Trickster from Northern New Mexico University. And I also do creative nonfiction. I do essay writing. I do a regular humor column called Fool's Gold that I've done for years now, and all kinds of other writing. So I just have fun, but you can learn more about the press and what all we do too at Casa Urraca Ltd.com, which is Spanish for Magpie House. And that gives a little more information about the publishing process we do and the workshops we host with some of our writers and things like that. No, Amanda just put it in the chat there for you. So, and my book is information on that Wild Expectations book that Amanda asked about is on there. And Amanda, I just kind of ran with that. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely, you sure did, and more. And to answer your question, the books are on our website at the Casa Urraca link for Bookworks there that I put into the chat. If you go to our homepage, you'll see Barrett's face. You can click on there. You can go to our events calendar. There's numerous ways to get there. But I do have all three of your books on the website. So I put them on there. You can buy them online and have them shipped, or you can come pick them up during curbside. Are they signed?
Sorry, what was that last thing?
I'm not sure if the books are signed.
Yeah, I signed mine. So.
Okay, great. There you go, folks. All right, does anybody else have anything they want to add? I'm wondering for Barrett, I know you write in many genres, including your life as a journalist and researcher. How is it different for you to write poetry? Do you have a different ritual? Are those a little bit more spontaneous for you, as you were talking about with your time in Las Vegas? How does that play out compared to your other types of writing, your poetry?
I think there's a lot of different ways. I kind of look at it as I'm writing at both ends of the spectrum, if you will. And I write a column once a week or 3 times a week in the old days and stuff. And I write a poem every day. And so there's a pace that's I think it's very different. And of course, there's a lot of difference. You cannot spend a lot of time on a column. You got to write it fast, and you have to be able to do multiple drafts at the same time. With a poem, I kind of like to think of myself as a carpenter. I'm trying to make the joinery smooth and get all the glue off, and just make it work smoothly. And so yeah, I think it's the same process, but as we all know as writers, if you move from one genre to the next, you really don't know anything, about it. You sort of assume just because you can write anything. It's not. It's never worked that way for me. Anyway. It's always been a struggle. But
Amaris, are you doing lots of writing during the pandemic?
I have been. Yes, I've been writing lots of poems, and I've been working on. I have a website called. That's not a website. It's a blog called merkmessenger.com. And I continue my weekly column that I started in '71, and so I've been doing that too. And it's been lovely for me. I've just had a lot of time to work.
Yeah, the New Mexico Mercury, I really enjoyed reading that. That's transformed to this blog now?
Yeah, called Merk Messenger, Mercury Messenger, but it's you couldn't get the whole thing in there, so it's called Merk Messenger. Can I say one thing about Bookworks, which I forgot to say at the beginning?
Absolutely.
Bookworks has been, a shining light in this town and this, in central New Mexico for quite a while now. And I just, I want to tell you how I like to use their holiday services. Is I like to order usually 1 or 2 books a year that I have read that I really want everybody else who I know, to read. So I order a whole bunch of them. And the best way to do that is to order a whole bunch of them through Bookworks, because they come on time. They'll even wrap them for you if you're lucky enough. And as always, their service is just immaculate and right on the dime. And they've been so good to me over the years. And as a matter of fact, I don't think we would have had New Mexico Mercury without Amanda's goad to push us to get the thing off the ground and actually do it. Me and Benito Aragon, who's my partner.
It was an excellent publication. I'm glad to hear you're still writing in that vein about New Mexico issues. Very important. Amaris, what are you working on these days?
Well, so I've actually been working on a comic about the Berkeley Pit in Montana, which is a Superfund site. And so it's been an interesting way to kind of continue exploring the economy of language and image and how the two should work together in order to make something that's both informative and surprising.
Nice.
Isn't the Berkeley Pit a pool of acid that if a bird happens to land in it, it dissolves?
Yes. So yeah. So the idea for this came from a Christmas visit. My father-in-law lives in Butte, Montana, and was a surveyor for the mines, the copper mines there. And we were visiting a couple years ago, and 10,000 snow geese swirled and landed on the pit. And of those, 4,000 that drank the pit water died because it's so acidic it can liquefy a motorboat's propeller.
Jesus.
Really? Yeah, it's one of the largest Superfund sites in America.
Liquefy. That's terrible.
So interesting. I love the places that you find inspiration for your work. Okay, we have a question from Rosalie Otero. I think this is probably for Barrett. Is the poem you used to read at our winter graduation in the book?
It is.
Would you read or sing it to us now? She asks.
Oh, Rosalie, my heavens. Okay, let me try and find it.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, that's okay. I'll do it, but I don't know where it is in the book.
This is a joy and a treat, and I am so glad it happens. Page 16.
Page
Okay.
what? 16? Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. All right, well.
Yes, I like your wallpaper. Amazing, beautiful.
I was blessed to get to teach in the UNM Honors program for 28 years or so. And early on, I was asked to read some poems, and I decided to read this one, but eventually I read it and then I try to sing it. So I'm not a very good singer, but Rosalie, it's wonderful to have you here. It's called Untitled, or sometimes it's called Solstice. Perfect clear light, star mind chorus, eye star joyous, pulse light clear, nerve star pulse sight, heart bright chorus, joyous, joyous, all one light. Perfect clear light, star mind, chorus. I star, joyous, pulse light, clear. Nerve star, pulse sight, heart bright, chorus. Joyous, joyous, all one light. Perfect, clear light, star mind, chorus. I star, joyous, pulse light, clear. Nerve star, pulse sight, heart bright, chorus. Joyous, joyous, all